being agreeable, mature. It looks like keeping the peace. It looks like professionalism. But underneath all of that is a pattern that is quietly costing you in your career, in your relationships, in your self-respect. Because here's the thing, keeping the peace is not the same as having peace. Welcome to What If It All Goes Right, the show for high achievers who are ready to stop fearing the worst and start stepping into their power. I'm your host, Angela Gargano, 6-time American Ninja Warrior, keynote speaker, peak performance coach, and former biochemist. Every episode, I'm going to give you the mindset shifts and practical tools to shake off the doubt, reignite your energy, and remember just how powerful you really are. Because it's time to stop fearing the worst and start asking, what if it all goes right? What if it's already going right? Welcome back, everyone, to What If It All Goes Right. I'm your host, Angela Gargano, and in this episode, this is one where it's going to really hit close to home. There is a conversation you have been putting off. Maybe you've been putting it off for days, for months, and maybe if you're really honest, for years. And maybe you've rehearsed in the shower. You've typed the message and deleted it. You told yourself the timing isn't right and that it's probably not a big deal, that bringing it up will only make things worse. And you've talked yourself out of it so many times that the whole thing has started to feel normal. But it's not normal because it's still there, living rent-free in your head, taking up space, draining your energy. It's like a tab is open back there. And every single day that you choose not to have that conversation, it's gonna keep getting worse. So today we're talking about that conversation, why you're avoiding it, and what it actually is costing you, how to finally have it in a way that doesn't blow everything up. And before we dive in, if this podcast has been landing for you, I want to ask you a quick favor right now. Make sure you're following me on Apple Podcasts or Spotify so you never miss an episode. And if you've got 60 seconds after this, please leave a review. It would mean so much to me and genuinely helps this show reach more women who need to hear it. Okay. Let's talk about the conversation that you keep avoiding. Okay, first off, I want to reframe what conflict avoidance actually looks like, because most of the time in women, this community would not describe themselves as conflict avoiders, and that's where it gets a little tricky. Because conflict avoidance doesn't always look like being a coward. In a lot of high achievers, it looks like being the easy one to work with, the low maintenance partner, the friend who doesn't make a big deal of things. It looks like being agreeable, mature. It looks like keeping the peace. It looks like professionalism. But underneath all of that is a pattern that is quietly costing you in your career, in your relationships, in your self-respect. Because here's the thing, keeping the peace is not the same as having peace. You can smile through a meeting and feel infuriated inside. You can say no worries and then be full of worries. You can let something go on the outside and hold onto it tightly on the inside. And so much that it starts to shape how you see that person, the job, the relationship entirely. And that has a shelter life, okay? It's gonna boil up inside of you until you explode. Now, let's talk about why a lot of high achievers and elite performers do this, and especially women struggle with this, because there's a reason. It's worse the more successful you become. For the time when we were young, most of us were taught that being likable matters, that being easy to be around is a virtue, that speaking up too directly makes you difficult, aggressive, emotional. The women who were praised were the ones who handled things gracefully, who didn't rock the boat, who made everyone feel comfortable. And so we learned to soften, to practice everything with, I might be wrong, but I don't want to make this a thing. We learned that keeping someone happy in the short term was safer than risking the relationship or the opportunity. But the cruel irony here is that the more successful you become, the higher the stakes feel, the more you have to lose. And so the more you might avoid it. The bigger the career, the more careful you get. The more important the relationship, the less willing you are to risk it. And the cycle just tightens. But the conversations do not go away. They just wind up getting heavier. So let's talk about what avoidance is actually costing you, because I think most people underestimate this. They see the conversation as the risk. They don't see the silence as the cost, right? So let's be direct. Resentment does build. And every time you swallow something that should have been said, a little more residue starts to build up. And you don't notice it at first. But over time, it changes how you feel and about that person. It changes your tone, your energy, your willingness to show up for them. Relationships don't usually end in blowups. They end in slow erosions, and avoidance is the engine of that erosion. So your credibility quietly erodes too. People notice when you won't address things directly. They notice that you'll complain to everyone except the person who needs to hear it. And they notice that you'll tolerate things you've said bother you. And over time, they stop taking your boundaries seriously because you've shown them that your boundaries are negotiable. You train people how to treat you. And every time you let something slide, you are teaching the person in front of you that they can keep doing what they're doing. You are setting the standard. And if the standard is that you'll absorb it and they will keep delivering it. And the energy cost is enormous. This one doesn't get talked about enough. The mental load of not having a conversation is often heavier than just having the conversation itself. The rehearsing, the replaying, the imagining the worst case scenario around that person. You are spending real energy every single day on a conversation that you haven't had yet. And that energy is not free. It's coming from somewhere. And the one that I think hits the hardest every time you back down from something that mattered to you, you lose a little trust in yourself. You start to learn that when things get uncomfortable, you fold. And that belief about yourself is far more damaging than any awkward conversation could ever be. Now, let's get specific here because the women I coach, the leaders I coach and I speak to, they aren't avoiding conflict in general. They're avoiding specific kinds of conversations. And I want to name the three I see most often so you can identify which one is sitting on your chest right now. The first is the performance conversation, the team member who isn't pulling their weight, the colleague who keeps dropping the ball, the employee you've given feedback to twice and nothing has changed. You don't want to seem harsh. You don't want to damage the relationship. So you absorb the gap. You work around them. And quietly, you start to resent them a little bit. The second is the relationship conversation. The partner where something has gone unsaid for too long and it started to feel like the wallpaper, the friendship where you've been quietly pulling back but never said why, the family member you're still carrying something with from years ago. These ones are the heavy ones because the stakes feel the highest and historically the longest. And the third one is the self-advocacy conversation, asking for the raise you've earned, setting the boundary you've been hinting at but never started to state it clearly, saying that you can actually what you actually need instead of hoping someone will figure it out. This is the one most women and achievers don't even categorize as conflict conversation, but it is because it requires you to put your needs on the table and risk someone saying no. So which one is yours? Or which ones have you been through before? You probably already know. Now, before we get into how to have the conversation, I want to spend a minute on the stories we tell ourselves to justify not having it. Because if you don't catch these, they will keep winning. The first one, it's not worth the drama. Sometimes fair and true. But most of the time, this is just avoidance dressed in wisdom. Ask yourself honestly, are you genuinely choosing your battle or are you just scared? Second one, it'll work itself out. Very occasionally things do, but conversations that have been sitting for weeks or months don't resolve themselves. They start to fossilize. 3, they won't hear it anyway. Fair, true, but you won't know until you try. And even if the conversation doesn't change them, having it can actually change you and make you feel lighter. The third one, now isn't the right time. This one is my favorite because the right time never comes. There will always be a reason to wait. The question is whether you're waiting strategically or you're going to wait indefinitely. Okay, so let's talk about how to actually have the conversation. The first thing, and this is the most important thing, is to get clear on your intention before the conversation and before you open your mouth. So ask yourself, am I trying to be right? Am I trying to resolve something? Because those are two completely different conversations and they go two completely different directions. If you go into win, you'll create some kind of fight. If you go into resolve, you create a pathway. Know which one you're walking into before you start. The second thing is to lead with impact, not accusation. There's a huge difference between you always do this and when this happens, here's what it costs. One puts someone on the defensive immediately. The other one opens a door. Instead of you never communicate with me, try. When I don't hear back, I end up making decisions without you. And that's not what I want. You see the difference there? It's the same issue, but it's just worded differently. It has a completely different energy. The third thing is to come with a request, not just a complaint. So before you have the conversation, know what you actually want the outcome to be. What would a good resolution look like? What do you need from this person going forward? Because venting without direction just creates more noise. And you want to leave the conversation with something different than what you walked into it with. So know what that is before you start. And the fourth thing is how to open. The opener that works is simple. I've been wanting to talk to you about something and I want to do it because this relationship matters to me. The one sentence does 3 things. It signals that something is coming so they're not blindsided. It frames it as a relationship investment rather than an attack. And it gives you somewhere to come back to if things get heated. And the fifth, manage your nervous system. Your body is going to want to run and flee. Your heart is going to race. Your voice might shake. Your instinct will be to rush through it or soften everything to point where the message disappears. Before you go in, take 3 slow breaths. Remind yourself that discomfort is not danger. And feeling the nervous system doesn't mean it's wrong. It means something matters to you, right? And those aren't the same things. If the conversation doesn't go the way you hoped, that gives you more information also. So how someone responds when you bring something honest to them tells you a lot about what the relationship can hold. Sometimes the conversation works, sometimes it doesn't. But either way, you'll know where you stand. And knowing is always better than the fog of avoidance. And here's what I want to say as well when it comes to conversations. I've had so many one of my best friends, Marissa, she was so great about this because I knew that I wanted to have a conversation with a past partner that I was with. And she asked me the genuine question before I went into the conversation, asking me what I truly did want out of it. Sometimes you go into the conversation and just like we were talking about before, it's not about going into the conversation and wanting necessarily anything from them out of it. Sometimes it just feels good for you. Like sometimes it's just like, I just really wanted to say that. And I feel like that's really a good thing to know. Like, hey, this is how this made me feel, blah, 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 blah. And like kind of setting what you want, the expectation of it to be before you go in is important and knowing what you are trying to get from it. If it is just like, hey, if I want to vent and tell you how I'm feeling, and if at the end of that person totally understands and you continue with them, or whether they don't, you have won either way. So I think it's really important to come in understanding what you're truly wanting, whether it just be, hey, I just want this conversation just to like get it out there, or like, oh, I would really like at the end of this for X, Y, and Z to happen. So just really understanding why I think you're going into it is really, really important. I also know what it feels like to go into these conversations and feel like that weight of like you're just not wanting to disappoint somebody, especially if the hard conversation has to do with something maybe for example, I had joined on to work on and help with this company, and then I realized that I did not have the capacity for it. It was too much, but I really liked the people. I thought they were great. I loved what they were doing. So I had to open up the conversation and say, "Hey, listen, like in such a nice way, like I cannot give you the support that you're looking to have. And I really want to have this conversation because I won't be able to continue doing this work for you guys. But maybe we can come up with a resolution." And that was really hard because I did not want to disappoint them. But let me tell you something, when I went into the conversation, already setting it up, how to open it, and already have the intention, it made having that conversation so much easier. And before that, I was sitting there even asking myself, well, maybe I just don't say anything. I don't want to be like difficult and annoying. I can just like stick it out or whatever it might be. But having that conversation is going to release so much unneeded, I like to say like tabs open in your brain. It's going to take the tabs that are open up in your brain and it's gonna just like get rid of them. So then you have more space and energy capacity to do other things. So I know how hard it is to have these hard conversations. I also recently, a little while back, like I had messaged one of my friends something hard that like I don't think I maybe handled it the way that I could have. I think I could have handled it honestly better. But I was getting really disappointed and worked up because I really care when I have friends personally, I really care about my friends and I want to make sure that they're set up for success. And I also just like, I like spending time with them and checking in on them. And I noticed that like there have been multiple times where this friend had bailed on me for a walk or wasn't hearing from them. And honestly, like part of me was like a little bit worried. And then like all these thoughts were going in my head. Well, she must hate me and I'm probably not good enough. Maybe I'm not good enough to be friends with her. All these like thoughts were in there. And then finally, one day she messaged me, like, this is after, like, not getting back to me for months or where which was just, again, like, just very weird for me because before this, our friendship was, like, we would message each other pretty instantaneously. And I said, "Hey, listen, I'm, like, pretty disappointed in the fact that, like, you've now bailed on me multiple times for a walk, and that was really frustrating to me, and I honestly felt like maybe you just, like, don't like me or something like that." And it was really hard for me to say, and I had this, like, this, like, shaken up piece in my body, like, "Oh my goodness, I just said that." And she definitely apologized and said, "Oh, I didn't mean to make you feel that way," or whatever it might be. And nothing really came of it. I still really don't hear from her that much, and I still really miss her. But um, I just closing that tab and just saying what I needed to say felt really good in that moment. And I think that sometimes it's really important to do that. And also sometimes people, when you have these conversations, they don't even realize that they're doing the thing that they're doing that's bothering you. Like, they may have no idea because everyone else is so absorbed in their own lives. That's even what I realized with this friend. I bet you she's just so absorbed in her life. She has an amazing relationship now. She's so absorbed in that she's not even noticing that thing is bothering me until maybe you bring it up and say it. And so a lot of times it's not an intentional thing. So bringing it up in the right way and just leaving that open, I think is something that's really fair and really honest. So um, I wanted to bring that up when it comes to these hard conversations. I've had to have a bunch of them, and sometimes they're hard. You learn from every single one of them that you have, but I just want to say, like, don't quiet yourself down. Uh, there's nothing wrong with like having boundaries and having your thoughts and bring it up. If anything, I feel like the people that I know in my life, I really respect them when they even come to me with something. Like I like truly respect it. Like, hey, like this isn't working. Like I want like let's this is bothering me, or even if it's like someone on my team, like, hey, like this isn't working out. Like, what are some things that we can do? Let's open up the conversation. I really respect somebody who does that. So they will probably respect you also. Anyways, here's what I want you to take away from today, that the conversations you avoid do not disappear. They just collect interest. So every time you don't have them, the weight gets a little heavier and the resentment gets a little thicker. And the gap between you and the person on the other side gets a little wider. So having the hard conversation is an act of self-leadership. It's saying, I respect myself enough to address this. I respect you to be honest. and I care about this relationship or this situation enough to risk the discomfort. And the more you practice it, the less terrifying it becomes. Not because it gets easier, exactly, but because you build evidence that you can do it, that you can survive the awkward pauses, that you can say the real thing and still be standing on the other side. The conversation you keep avoiding is not the threat. The silence and not bringing it up is. Now, if this episode hit home, send it to somebody in your life who's maybe needs to have a conversation or they're sitting with it. um, Sometimes just knowing someone else sees it is enough to help them start, and make sure that you follow the podcast so you never miss an episode. Oh, and I'll see you in the next episode. And remember, the people who say the hard things with honesty and care, even when their voice shakes, they are the most powerful people in the room. And remember, what if it all goes right? What if it's already going right?